Good evening, fiends. Welcome to another episode of Sinister Parlor Podcast. I'm Zombie Barbie, and tonight I have a very special guest, writer, director, producer, and actor of the cult classic film Spookies and also Street Trash, Frank Farel, like the singer.
But I didn't perform all those functions on both those films necessarily.
Right. But you just do everything.
I do everything given a chance, yeah.
Yes. All right. So, we'll start with Spookies, which you were writer and producer. Did you also direct as well on that one?
No, essentially, the film was written by myself and my two partners, Tom Doran and Brendan Faulkner. And we had been working together for several years to try and get a horror feature into production. We had a few false starts. We started a project called Bloody Pulp at one time, which we got going, started shooting. Fangoria even covered it.
Oh, wow.
And then we couldn't raise the rest of the money, so the film just never went on. We then had a project called Hellspawn. We actually had a number of projects, but Hellspawn was the next one. We started shooting actual scenes. We were going to do a promo and then incorporate that into a proposed feature. And in the midst of that, we met this gentleman from England, Michael Lee, who was looking for someone to make him a horror movie. He was the owner of the British video company Vipco, which is known for exclusively pretty much for horror movies. His whole thing was he capitalized on the video nasty thing that happened back in the 80s in England, where every horror movie was accused of being obscene or unfit for human consumption or whatever else.
Yeah.
And so almost every really gory movie of that period, his company was the one that released it in Britain.
Oh, wow. Okay.
But he came here. He knew and had talked to various other low-budget filmmakers, an English director named Terry Marcel, Andy Milligan, who's a fairly infamous exploitation filmmaker here in the U.S. And somehow he wound up coming to us. And the reason I think he went with us is because we had people we were working with already who were heavily into doing makeup effects and prosthetics and monsters with puppetry and that type of thing. And he wanted that. He wanted a haunted house monster movie.
Nice. So Spookies was released in 1986, right? Ish.
I blank out all the time on the actual release year, but I think it's 86, yes. Because we shot our film in 84, and it was supposed to come out in 85, we thought, and then when there was the whole controversy in the editing stage, it took another few months and it didn't come out until 86.
Okay. So, back in the 80s, obviously we didn't have like Kickstarters and Indiegogo and, internet where we could find people. So how did you find him to know that he was looking for a movie?
It was basically, to tell the truth, myself and my one of my partners, Tom, has passed away, and my other partner, Brendan, is still alive. He's in the documentary that I told you about that we also have on the double disc edition of Spookies. Pardon me, I lost my train of thought because I was thinking of too many things at once. What was I about to answer?
How you found him, that you knew he was looking for a movie.
I thought he was introduced to us by one of our makeup people, a fellow named Arnold Gargiulo, who was the guy we were working with on the Hellspawn project. That's my memory. My partner seems to feel we connected with him in another way, so I don't know.
It's conflicting. You're not sure.
Right, but he came. He was there at the makeup workshop. I think all this stuff impressed him, and he had just tried making a horror film of sorts in England with people there, and he brought. In fact, he brought one of my partners over to the UK shortly after we met him to look at all this footage that was shot because he couldn't decide whether to finish this film or not.
Wow.
And my partner saw it. He said, no, this film is terrible. Throw it away.
Oh my gosh.
We'll make a new film. And so that's pretty much where it came from. In fact, a good portion, I'm trying to remember. I am pretty sure. See, here's a confession here. I haven't even personally had a chance to watch all the extras on the Blu-ray discs because I'm just too busy. So I don't No parts of it are in the documentary, but there was a film he made called The Anger that he was, interested to see whether we thought it should continue to be made. But that there's a good portion of it in the documentary, and I'm forgetting whether they put the entire rough cut of it on the disc, because I gave them a VHS copy of it.
Oh, dang. And the documentary is Twisted Tale, right?
Twisted Tale, The Unmaking of Spookies.
The Unmaking of Spookies. So everybody check that out.
Yes.
There's a lot of information there, you said, right?
Quite a lot. And I think the story is well told. I think there are good guys and bad guys. And I think it's a good lesson for filmmakers. I mean, it seems to capture people's imagination, because as a human interest story. A lot of people just said, "Oh, you should do a book, or you should do a fictional movie based on the making of the movie, because there's just a lot of drama there." But I'm really pretty, I feel the story for filmmakers is an important one, because when you go to someone to finance your movie, unless you're doing it with, let's say, the usual structure for low-budget movies has been a limited partnership type of arrangement, meaning that you have complete creative control of the movie, and the funding people are separate from that. They cannot interfere creatively with anything you're doing. That's a way to make a movie and have control. Once you get to a studio or a film production house that wants to fund your film, with very few exceptions, because I think even the biggest directors deal with this, it's like they have their views, their demands. This is how we see it. This is what we want. And so I think you just have to realize that's going to happen. In our case, we had control while we were shooting for the most part. But the fact that we had this person like hovering over us almost all the time, he was on the phone with me every day from England, made it very difficult at times, because he questioned anything we wanted to do. He wanted, he would, be like, why do you need, you need 3 pounds of nails. What are you going to do with those nails? Are you sure you need 3 pounds?
Oh my gosh.
That type of thing.
Micromanaging.
Well, he did. I mean, understand that each week I had to sit on the phone with him and go down my list of requests for everything we needed to spend in the coming week, including paying the crew, including food, like everything. He wanted everything accounted for, and he would only release to us a week at a time because he couldn't trust us.
Oh, geez. And this is the guy over in the UK.
Yeah, I mean, the unfortunate fact is that he was the kind of person who didn't trust people, because he was not really especially trustworthy himself.
Yeah. Funny how that works, right? When someone else is untrustworthy, they don't trust anybody else.
No, it's like if you're, and he was a real hustler. He used to, he used to sell bootleg merchandise on the streets of London, and that's what led to his involvement in the video business. He was pirating at first, and then he got into it legitimately by buying rights.
Oh, okay. Well, that makes sense why he was like that.
I think his general attitude, I guess, I have no idea how cutthroat his early business days were, but his attitude was like, I'm looking to screw everyone, and so I have to naturally assume you're looking to screw me.
Yeah.
When that was really the last thing on our mind was screwing him. We wanted to make the best film we could possibly make for his sake and ours.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, definitely. And you wrote it, and you want to see it come to life. You want it to be the best that it can be. So why would you try to screw someone over when you're trying to make your baby come to life?
Unfortunately, his mindset was such that, there was no reasoning with him a lot of the time. We had to really play psychologists in many cases and just sort of humor him and baby him and try not to upset him. And we always upset him anyway. It was kind of unavoidable.
Yeah.
I would never, if I ever had to make a film like that again, I would probably refuse, because it was just too draining.
Yeah.
In so many ways.
Yeah.
And beyond which, understand, the film we made was based on his premise. He wanted a specific kind of film done in a specific kind of way. And we had a script, for Hellspawn that we were already partially, we had shot. And he just was like, no, I want like I want to film just like the Evil Dead. And I want monsters popping out of there, and I want a closet, and a monster pops out of there, and then there's a trapdoor, and something pops out of it, and everything. And we went home that night. My partner said, "Well, we're making a film about things popping out of things."
Like, I guess we're rewriting everything now.
So it really came down to that. He wanted just something with like all kinds of shit happening constantly, which is fine. The problems came in things like, him saying, "Oh, well, I want a group of teenagers," and we were like, "Do they have to be teenagers?" It's like,
yeah,
could they possibly be other kinds of people? No, teenagers. So we wrote it for teenagers for the most part, and then we cast people in their 20s and older. So
yeah, you're like, we'll just say that they're teenagers.
People watching and reviewing the film will still watch the film, and despite what they're seeing on the screen, call them teenagers.
Oh, really?
Oh, all the time.
I noticed, I don't remember his name, but I noticed that one of the one couple, he was a little bit older, but I never correlated.
Well, that was intentional. And that in our cut there was dialogue sort of explaining their relationship, and he basically was dating this younger woman. These are her friends. He's like really unhappy even being with them.
Yep.
And, but I mean, that's gone, and there's some of the conflict between characters there, but it's brief and it's not really clear why it might exist.
Mm-hmm. And that's because of everything that happened as far as,
I've learned from having been involved in the process enough times that when you make a movie and you have to cut it down for time, the first things to go are things like explanations, characterization information, lots of stuff because the story has to flow. It's like you can lose some character, you can lose this detail, but the story has to flow.
Yeah.
I think it's one of the reasons I think a lot of movies get criticized of very poor characterization, because that's usually the first stuff to be taken out for running
time. Yeah. So you were saying before we started recording, you were saying that there was a lot of conflict, and it was basically a horror story in itself trying to make the film. Can you say what happened as far as
how tell me what you want to know and I'll answer it.
Okay, like how a lot of it you said was not what you originally had written. Everything was reshot
Spookies as it exists now.
Yes.
This new person, whose name I will not mention again, came in, convinced our backer that the film was unworkable as it was. I mean, we left in the midst of a first rough assembly. A rough assembly means that you just sort of take shots and put every shot that you think you're going to use in there, and it's all very loose. There's repetitive action. There's lots of stuff that obviously is going to be taken out, but it was about 2.5 hours long.
Mm-hmm.
And she saw this and said, "Oh, there's not enough here for a feature film." Because she was already, I think, at that stage realizing that she could talk him into letting her shoot something. Mm-hmm. And I have the feeling that as that progressed, it became, "Oh, well, why don't we do a whole new framing story? And then we don't need X, Y, and Z." And because there's it does nothing to help the story. The story was simple, to begin with. I mean, it was basically a bunch of people in a house and there are monsters. Mm-hmm. And it came down to everything, as I told you, as I told you before the show, the editing, everything is just, every cut is different than it's intended to be. The actual horror scenes, the monster scenes, which you figure are like the money scenes for the movie, that's why anyone wants to see this in the first place.
Yeah.
Everything just reduced in running time. Things like the scene with the spider lady. There were just lots of shots, camera moves, destroyed, really. I mean, I'm trying to be, charitable, and to the average viewer just watching it, you're not going to know that. It looked, a lot of it to me just, it plays like, any low budget horror movie might play, but it was better. There was, our original film was intended to be full of elaborate camera moves and things like this. There were lots of, we spent so much time setting up track for dolly shots, all of which were cut out of the film.
Oh, shit.
She pretty much went with close-ups and pieces of shots to be able to to let scenes play out, and it just it's not, it just doesn't feel in any way like what we intended. You know, it's kind of, I think it's a unique situation in that the film was so expressly destroyed for her own benefit.
Yeah.
You know, I don't think that usually happens. Usually that, you know, someone will come in and they'll get hired to fix something up or shoot something new. But I think it's rare that somebody has come in and said, oh, all right, just forget about this, and I'm going to make the movie now.
Yeah, she wanted
Especially
to be
when
her own.
He was so cheap and so concerned about wasting money. She got him to spend, from what I know, about as much as we already spent. I mean, not the same amount, but close to it. I mean, the film, what we shot wound up costing a little over $300,000, and when she was done, it was over $500,000.
Wow.
For footage that to me looks like it could have been shot in like less than a week for next to no money at all, for the most part. I mean, half of it is the character of Creon sitting in a room talking.
Yeah. Yeah. Jeez, $500,000. That's so much money.
It is, but it's like in the movie industry, it's not. It's still
not.
I mean, at that time, it was a low budget film. At this time, it's a lower budget film, but things have changed somewhat because with video technology, you can do more with money. You can shoot faster. You know, a lot of things are balanced differently, so that it's possible to do films if you're very creative that are good for next to no money.
Yeah.
Or you can just do films that aren't any good and still get them out there and people will watch them. So
that's true too. Yeah. I mean, especially, you know, with all these like online platforms and stuff, I mean, I'll just scroll through, have no clue what a movie is. I'm like, that sounds good, and turn it on and watch it.
No, that's the thing too. It's like I'm used to, you know, I'm a film buff and a film historian. I know the history of movies. I can pretty much like talk about any kind of a movie from any time from most countries. Recently, I see stuff coming out, and especially with the horror genre, it's just like, all right, here's 1,000 movies I've never heard of. I have no reference point. They all look like they could be terrible or great. I have no idea. You know, I think that's why there's so much, as you're aware, I mean, people have to do self-promotion. You have to get out there. And I think personalizing it is the way to make that successful. You know, to really just connect with the people who like your work. And that's also extremely gratifying.
Yeah. Oh yeah, definitely. And it's nice now because, you know, like even, you know, meeting you, I met you on Facebook. Like a lot of the social media really helps you to connect with, you know, your directors and actors and producers and production companies. It really makes it easier to connect and also find work of people that you never would have heard of, or find people that, you know, you never would have talked to.
It's true. And it's, and I was very down on a lot of most social media platforms for a long time, meaning I had limited exposure to Facebook, and I was not really thrilled with a lot of things about it. I'm still not, but now I've been on it for 6 months. I have over 1,000 friends, people like constantly contacting me for one thing or another, and that's, you know, that's great. And I realize how that can help me to maybe get some other things accomplished.
Definitely.
But originally, I had a very negative attitude towards social media, so I kept off. But I think the fact that I also now have this film that has finally come out in a really pristine, gorgeous-looking print with a documentary explaining what went wrong, and people are sort of becoming more and more aware of what happened, so that they can at the same time say, "Oh, well, I've always loved the film, but now that I've heard the whole story, I really have a different understanding," and that, I think, really just provides a picture that I can live with, as opposed to just the movie itself before anybody had any idea what happened.
Yeah, yeah. Because like what you were saying before we started recording, is it's really picked up in the last year, right? As far as people learning about it.
The Blu-ray DVD set came out in late November of last year. And you know, we did a signing event at the Vinegar Syndrome headquarters, met by a very enthusiastic crowd. And since that time, I mean, the thing is, it's a movie that lots of people had heard about. You could not buy it except used or bootlegged, or of course you could watch it on YouTube.
Mm-hmm.
But the film was not. It got a VHS release in this country in '86, and then never again. And it's one of the things I didn't understand, to tell the truth, because the fellow I told you about, Michael Lee, the backer,
Mm-hmm.
he released it numerous times in England under different labels and with different covers, but he never again released it in the U.S., where he obviously would have been able to make more money.
Mm-hmm.
It just never made any sense to us, and we still don't know why.
Do you think that was to make it where you guys didn't know how much money he was making, because it's harder to track over there?
No, because the information we got about how much money it was making, we could only sort of get second and third hand anyway.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, if we'd gotten it from him, he would have lied about it. So that he's not a good source.
I can't trust anything he fucking says.
But it just didn't make sense to us, because he was such a money-minded type, and yet, the film had its last release in the '80s, never again.
Wow.
It just made no sense. Plus, he was going, even when he released it on DVD in England, he was still going with the transfer he made for his original VHS release. So he never upped the quality of anything. In fact, his company Vipco was infamous for really never really caring very much about the quality of the film that they put out.
Oh, jeez. Like that's crazy. That's unfortunate, and especially like I was saying before, that was your story, and you guys had the ideas you wanted and what you wanted to see on screen, and that somebody came along and changed everything and made it their own. That's such bullshit. That's so disheartening.
I think they played on the backers' insecurities.
Mm-hmm.
There is also the side factor that the person who did this was, for a time, in the late '80s specifically, just prior to this and after, was a fairly well-known porn actress.
Oh,
and
okay.
She had also started directing, and she was editing in porn. And this was the background she came with to present herself as the person to do this. We suspect there may have been something else going on behind the scenes.
Probably. For her to have that much pull on somebody who was such a jerk, that probably had something to do with it.
Absolutely. I don't see any other way it could have happened. Because what I really didn't understand is how she could get him to agree that, yes, you should cut down the horror scenes so I can include the Catman more. It's really, to me, there are probably lots of things that we'll just never know about how it wound up.
Yeah. Is she still around?
She's still around. They attempted to contact her for the documentary.
Mm-hmm.
She did not get back to them. She did get back to them just a few months ago, after the disc was out.
After she saw it?
I don't know if she'd seen it, but they had asked her if she might still be willing to do an interview, and she said she would. This is after and these are the guys who did the documentary, Glenn and Mike. And this is after I said to Glenn, I believe it was, that hell, get her. We'll get her on the show, and I'll debate her live about
that would be awesome.
I know, and I'd still kind of like to do it, but I feel sort of weird about it. Partially because it's indefensible. There's no way she can defend what she did.
Yeah.
I mean, she can make all kinds of excuses and she has. There are interviews with her that were published at the time of the film's initial release. I forget the festival in France that it won the Delirium Award at the French Science Fiction and Fantasy Film Festival, and she accepted the award in her, as the director. And there's an interview from the time that I had translated. I published part of it on my Facebook page a while back. But she goes out of her way to fabricate information. She claims she supervised the original directors. And beyond which, she alternates between talking like she knows what she's trying to sound like she knows what she's saying, and then at the same time saying, well, I don't really know very much about horror movies. I wasn't really into them before doing this.
Interesting. Jeez, that's horrible.
The movie business.
It really is. I mean, it's such a cutthroat place. It really is.
it's more than anything else. I mean, the two things that run this business are like ego and money.
Mm-hmm.
And then you've got people who just want to do something for the sake of art primarily. And I think all three are, if that's what you want, that's fine. But in many cases, I just feel ego rules over everything. That ultimately, even people will screw themselves financially if their ego can prevail.
Oh yeah, definitely. Yeah, I've learned a lot about the business being in it, and it's like, it's amazing. I really didn't think people could be that way until you're in it, and you're like, oh man.
Yeah. I mean,
I would
and
never
I've
be
had
that way.
I've had this basic conversation a few times with people recently that it's just like, you reach a point where you've had enough experiences and you just you question humanity to some extent. It's like,
Yeah.
how can people be this low? I mean, there's so little to be gained and so much to be gained by treating people decently. Why would you do that?
Yeah. Oh yeah. I agree 100%. It's very sad how people can be.
And I've always tried to, I look at everybody working on a film with me, especially if it's my film and if I'm one of the people in charge. It's like, I want everybody to feel involved. I want everybody to like be very enthusiastic about their work. I want people to feel like they have a stake in things.
Yeah.
That makes a big difference.
It really does. Yeah. I was talking to one of my other guests not too long ago, and we were talking about how a lot of people too will be in a movie, but they'll never promote it. And it's like, don't you want to promote your work? Don't you want to be proud of what you did? But they're just like, man, it ain't my job. Fuck off. And it's like, you should be promoting. Like, what's wrong with you?
Are people famous enough not to care?
The ones that we're kind of talking about or that we've seen, no, they're not famous enough to not care. They just don't give a shit.
I can't believe people don't realize this at this point, especially, I mean, I can see people, my age or older, not quite understanding how important this is just because they haven't grown up with it. But I mean, people have grown up with, social media in general, for what YouTube, Facebook, 2005, 2000, I don't remember when but they have both changed the way everything is done. It's like, if you don't want to self-promote, then you really don't care enough about succeeding, I think.
Yeah. Oh no, I totally agree. Because it's like, that's how you promote is social media.
I mean, the old model was, I do the job, and then this person promotes it, or these people promote it. But it just doesn't work like that anymore. There's still people doing that job for the industry as a whole.
Mm-hmm.
But right now, I also think people just appreciate the personal touch. It's like if a big director puts something out on Facebook, people will go like, "Oh wow!" If it's just a publicity release, it's a publicity.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's just it's crazy. So with the practical effects and stuff, did you at least have a say so in that, like how you wanted the monsters to be, or how you wanted, or was that not what you envisioned?
As I said, the story was pretty much dictated to us by our backer. And it was frustrating because we had a script, Hellspawn, we felt was a better concept. It was a similar type of thing. It was an old house movie. It was a monster movie, but we had better characters. We had more interesting themes and ideas. And Spookies was like, as we were told, I want to film just like The Evil Dead, more or less. But we realized, all right, we can still, if we can make this really terrific in terms of the monsters are what's going to matter. That's what people are going to be talking about. That's what people are going to want to see the film for. So that's where most of our energy and thought went. And I think in our original film, we pretty much succeeded because we certainly had too many monsters for the budget we were working with, of the sort that we had, meaning that, an enormous amount of time just spent in the makeup shop, an enormous amount of time spent on set trying to get something to work because you haven't had a chance to test it really. It's just made and it's supposed to do X, Y, and Z, and it's supposed to, give you what you want, and then it doesn't quite work out. And I went through this, and on Street Trash it was like even more so. I mean, it's on Street Trash we were figuring out. Have you seen Street Trash?
I couldn't find that one, so I pulled it up on
Probably not.
Amazon.
I don't know if it's on YouTube, but Street Trash is a film in which people melt.
from
and we were figuring out like how to do a lot of the effects as we were doing them, because they're, you know, nobody had done exactly this type of thing before, and so whatever we came up with was you know, was sort of what we shot, and it worked out fine as far as I'm concerned.
Oh, good. Yeah, I want to watch it. I read the concept on it. I was like, oh, that sounds really good. And I started looking for it, and I'm like, I can't find it.
The film, I feel proud of. It came out pretty much as intended. I think it's really very creative in almost every aspect. I think it's fun. It's also like absolutely tasteless, and it's still like shocking today.
Nice. Yeah, I'll find it somewhere. I'm going to search for it because it sounds really good.
All right. Well, if you still have a problem, get in touch with me.
Okay. I will for sure. Dang. And then that released in 1987, correct?
Yeah.
Okay. And then that's one that you acted in. Did you write it as well?
Oh, no. I was brought into it as a production manager and line producer, and then to my shock, Roy Frumkus, who was the central producer and was the screenwriter, said, "Oh, I wrote you a part." and I read the script, like, and he said, "Well, I thought this would be perfect for you. You're really good with physical comedy, and you." And one of I remember one of our makeup effects people, Jennifer Aspinall, who has in the years since won awards and Emmys and has done makeup for Saturday Night Live and for many television shows and films. She read the script and said, "This is a joke, right? You're not going to shoot this, are you?"
He's like, we were shooting.
We were sure, yes, this was going to be shot. So.
And what happened to you?
I am dismembered. In fact, that's actually the actual on-screen credit for the character is dismembered bum.
Dismembered bum. That's awesome. Yeah, I definitely need to watch it. It sounds really good, and the story isn't anything I've heard before. So I was like, oh, that sounds good. It's interesting because,
and I was just talking to someone about this yesterday that. When Street Trash came out, we knew it was full of bad taste and very offensive, but it was intentionally that way.
Yeah.
It was like we were really sort of saying, all right, let's not put any, it was written that way, but it was even while we were shooting, it was like, all right, let's not put any limits on it, or let's overdo it and see if we can get away with it and for almost everything. And there was no reason not to do that.
Yeah.
And at the time, a lot of the reviewers and people who saw it were seriously upset by it. When we did a premiere at the Ziegfeld Theater in New York City, which was for years like the best theater as far as I'm concerned in terms of screen size and sound and seats. And we invited everyone connected with the film and their families. It's like we filled this theater, and every 10 minutes there was a melting scene, and it seemed like 100 people walked out of the theater.
Oh my God!
Because it was like, oh my God, I can't take this. And this. It's not exactly realistic gore. I mean, people are melting in blues and yellows and things like this. But they were very upset by that and the general tastelessness. I mean, grungy characters, everybody's dirty, etc. And people were offended by what they deemed gore. Although considering that it's like, like it's like pastel colors and stuff. I don't know what it's. Really. But the interesting thing is, in recent years, I've had people, mostly younger people, tell me that the film upset them because it put the homeless in a very poor light. Jeez. Because it takes place amongst a community of homeless people.
Yeah.
And I lived in New York, and I more or less lived amongst the actual homeless. I mean, they were always around, and it's not like, I thought we put them in a much better light than a lot of people on the street.
Yeah.
And I found it interesting that they had to, they were going for some kind of social justice reaction or something to this aspect of the movie. Plus, it's a comedy, so we're making fun of everybody in this film, and it's not, it's like, what are you making a fuss over this for? But it's, it's not the first time. Well, it's like the Spider Lady in Spookies. Right? In just the past year, never heard this before, a couple of people bring up, oh, well, gee, it's unfortunate that they fell back on the stereotype of the Asian Spider Woman.
Oh, my
And I thought, wait a minute. They're the only Spider Woman that I know of. First of all, there's Spider Woman legends in many cultures. There are actually Spider-Woman legends in Chinese and Japanese culture. But the woman who played the part, who was Korean, just happened to be the person we cast. We weren't casting for an Asian person. We wanted someone with an exotic, different look. But there is no stereotype, and there is no version of a Spider-Woman that's ever come out of American culture or entertainment that I can think of. So where do people get this idea?
Just stupid people find a reason to complain.
You know, I mean, I'm used to that type of thing, but I still get little surprises like that. It's like, oh, gee, I'm actually politically correct all these years, or incorrect all these years later.
It's like 20-something years later, and they got to find that one little thing in there that bothers them.
Which is fine with me. I really am concerned that people are going to stop making films with things that might offend people, because I think I personally like to see films that provoke me. Yeah.
And it's like, I mean, that was kind of like the whole point in horror. It's stuff that would hopefully, you know, like never happen. And you like that. You like the gore factor. You like the surprises. You like, you know, shit that just really wouldn't happen. And I've never looked at a horror film and been like, oh my gosh, that offends me. I can't believe that they did that.
Yeah, no, it's true. I mean, I'm offended if something's, you know, really stupid or bad. I mean, to me, the films I most get offended by are films that are just conceived in cynicism, meaning there's no real creativity or passion or anything. It's just like, it's either just a money thing, or, you know, or it's somebody who, again, it's, you know, it's ego. It's somebody who wants their name on a film as the director. You know, it's like, because I see some of these films now, these very low budget films that people are making. In fact, I had a guy talk to me yesterday about a film he's making that he asked me if the title was too tasteless. And I said, what's the film about? And I said, well, no, considering how tasteless what you just told me is, the title you have is fine. It's perfect for the audience you're going for. It's a $300 film. Right? But I like to be able to talk to someone like that and encourage them and give them, you know, if they want my advice, I'm really thrilled to give it to them.
Well, it's nice that they're coming to you too and asking. That's
well, it is, and
nice.
It's interesting to me too, because it's like, I've even asked people, like, what do you think the barriers are, the limits are these days? Are they, you know, their political correctness has made things different in that respect, but is something, you know, is there something you shouldn't show or can't show? I mean, I think you can almost always tell when somebody's trying to cross a line.
Yeah.
You know, you see something and you go, oh, and sometimes it's just stupid and you go, oh, all right, they were trying to be really offensive and it's just dumb.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I also think, I don't think you have to strive for being offensive. I think if you're telling a horrific story, theoretically you should be coming up with stuff that just naturally is offensive to human sensibilities in some way. You know, you don't want it to be too comfortable.
Yeah. No, definitely not.
You know, and I'd rather see something that tries to take things in a different direction, or maybe, you know, goes in some weird extreme way, that instead of seeing the same thing over and over again. I get that is one of my frustrations with all these, you know, new direct-to-video little movies that come out. There's so many of them just seem to be 8,000 versions of the same movie.
Oh yeah, definitely.
You know, and that's always been part of the horror genre. There's always imitations of imitations. But at the moment, it's just like, you know, why would you aspire to do that? In other words, why not just do something a little different?
Oh yeah. Yeah, I've heard that so many times. Like, people, you know, want to have an original story or an original idea, but so many directors, etc., or writers are writing exactly the same story someone else did, just doing it a little tiny bit different. And you can always see it. You're like, well, that's the same as that.
Well, I mean, like, just, you know, getting back to what I said about Spookies earlier, it's, I can't tell you how many times I'll look at a cover, a video cover, and check the synopsis, and the synopsis begins with a group of teenagers. ...
Yep. Find themselves lost in this haunted house.
Right, and I've asked this of like a number of people, but I mean, even I, as a teenager or as a kid, I think I probably, in most cases, especially with something like horror films, I identified with adult characters. I wasn't looking for people my own age to necessarily identify with.
Yeah.
I mean, I think in seeing a horror movie, you sort of realize this, when you're young, at least, that you're having sort of an adult experience when you first start to see this type of film.
That's true too. Mm-hmm.
So I don't know. I mean, the whole cliche of the teenagers to be killed. I think it's just. I think that they just provide good killing fodder is the only reason, really.
Yeah.
It's not because the audience identifies with them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's very true. So as far as with the effects and stuff, was a lot of that hard to do? Okay, so you, like when the girl is playing kind of like not a Ouija board, but that board where she had the little thing
Right.
or whatever, and she just like turned into that creepy monster. Was that kind of stuff
Well, it is
super
the
hard?
Ouija board. It's our own design for a Ouija board.
Okay. And that's why she was kind of explaining the Ouija board.
Because we were told to come up with an original design because there was worry about being sued if we used the traditional design.
Yeah, which that makes sense.
Which I've seen in about 100 other movies.
Right. There's even like movies called Ouija with Ouija boards.
Yes.
But like the makeup like hers and then even like the little creatures and stuff, was that super hard to do, or did it?
Oh yeah, I mean we had a crew. Amazingly, almost all the effects people that worked on Spookies later went on to major careers in effects. Cool. There was Gabe Bartalos, who's also well known for. He's done like most of the Basket Case movies. He's done most of. Let's see, he did the Leprechaun series.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah, I mean he's. I mean Gabe is like he's one of the people at the top of the industry, at least as far as I'm concerned.
That's awesome. Good for him.
But then there was also, I mean, Vincent Guastini, who worked essentially as an effects assistant, but has gone on to become like a major effects guy, heading his own shop, working on lots of major movies, TV shows. Jennifer Aspinall, who I've already mentioned.
Mm-hmm.
Who else? Tom Molinelli, who was a designer who I just sort of met around that time, and I brought him into our project, and he proved to be. He designed a lot of the sets and built them, and actually nowadays does makeup on big, genuine Hollywood movies.
That's super cool.
So I think we picked like some really good people. I mean, I felt good about like the design. As I said, we had a lot of trouble at times getting effects to work because we were pretty much, the experimenting was like, going in front of the camera because we didn't know all the time what the results would be. Sometimes something had to be fixed up very quickly or somehow, made usable at a certain time based on our schedule. It's a real trial and error process. Mm-hmm. If I was to do another effects picture now, I would budget for just a period of experimentation with any of the creatures. If you're doing these practical effects, they have to work as well as possible.
Yeah.
So that you can rely on them instead of knowing that each time you say action, you don't know what's going to happen.
Yeah, you're like, oh, it might work, it might not. And some stuff you can't fix right away either. And when you're on like a time limit and a budget,
and the thing is, you wind up shooting like different takes and cutting different angles, and you can fix it in the editing. But for me, that type of stuff works best when you can have extended shots of something. It gives it more presence and reality. If you just do quick 1 and 2 second shots, I think you feel cheated and you sort of know the filmmakers couldn't carry it all. Mm-hmm. And unfortunately, that's how a lot of it is cut now with the final, the Miss Joseph cut of the film.
God, that sucks so bad. And you were saying you don't have the footage to be able, if you get the rights back, to be able to.
This is the question everyone asks. And as far as we know, the footage went back to England with the backer when he was last asked about it, which was in the past couple of years. It's like, oh no, all that stuff is gone. It's destroyed.
God, that's horrible.
I mean, that's what happens most of the time. I mean, understand that most films are made, and then after they're cut and released, they just scrap everything else. So nobody knows that, oh, gee, we might want to come back and recut this someday. Studios do tend to keep a lot of their old material, and that's why we sometimes now get, much older films that suddenly there's a new cut or a new version.
Yeah, and like extended release and... behind the scenes footage and stuff like
And
that.
I think nowadays they understand this, so they probably hold on to everything.
Just in case.
Yeah.
Well, because like movies will be popular or they won't be popular, and then all of a sudden years later they just like get super big and everybody's into them and this and that. So it's
right. No, it happens all the time. I mean, look, I sort of felt that if Spookies ever got out on a good quality disc release with, you know, the right extras and the right package, that it would be well received. But the reception has been better than I expected in terms of just so many people are just wild about the movie. And it's like, for a while, when years ago, people would come to me and say, "Oh, Spookies, I've seen that. I love it." I'd be like, what's wrong with you?
I really think the 80s movies are coming back to where, you know, all of us in the horror field, we love that old, just, it takes you back to that time. You love the practical effects because everything now is so CGI'd, and yes, it's good and it's great, but there's just something different with practical effects. And I think that we love that.
Yeah, I mean, I hear this over and over again. Almost all horror fans would share your view. I just think that the CGI, yes, as you said, it can look excellent. It can also look incredibly bad because it looks over realistic. It's like, and that's the problem I frequently have, is like when my brain is saying, all right, nothing like this that you've ever seen exists in reality. Nothing looks like this.
Yeah.
You know, it's like there's frequently too much detail, for instance, and in real life, if you saw this thing in a room, you would not see these details. You would not have the chance to see these details.
Exactly.
And I think the practical effects creatures have a presence. They're there. Whatever you can say about them, no matter how phony and rubber they look, they are there in front of you. You know that.
Yep, exactly.
So I think that makes a difference. And in some cases, I think it's fine anyway. I mean, some of the stuff in Spookies, can look a little goofy, and I don't have a problem with that. And a lot of times, effects can look not realistic, but still be fine, be perfectly appropriate for whatever the film is.
Oh yeah, definitely. Yeah. So like the creatures, like the little one that was like, I think it said "Mama" or something like that. Was that a puppet?
That's not one of ours. That whole zombie chasing, that was all added later.
Oh, okay.
In fact, many of the creatures that appear in that scene were either creatures. We fired one of our makeup people, whose name I mentioned earlier, but I won't tell you again, because he was turning in work that was just absolutely unusable. Oh, and he was rehired to do the reshoot.
Oh.
And he brought like basically the contents of his workshop, of all these heads and other things that he had. And so a lot of the stuff that appears in that scene is just like busts and torsos and stuff from his workshop that was thrown in there. And that particular moment, to me, that's the absolute lamest moment of the entire movie.
Mama.
Yeah. I mean, that's, oh God, what a cringy.
But at least everybody loves it, but it's, whenever you are living it and you know what got cut and you know how it could have been and you know what you originally wrote, that's
right.
when you're
the greatest frustration is just that this wasn't the only film we wanted to make, and it really stood in the way of, I went on to make Street Trash after Spookies, and I continued to work in the industry for years, but I could not get to the point of getting another feature film financed. In part because Spookies was something I had to, at least for many years, had to disown to some degree.
Yeah.
But things are very different now. As you said, 80s horror is, not just 80s horror, but it just seems all movies from the 80s for the nostalgia factor, and just, I think, because movies, even though they've become so technically slick, not just CGI, but other things are easier to do now than they were for so many years. Video just changed a lot of the visuals and textures. I think there's just a lot that you get out of older films, and this, and I think this is true of not just the 80s, but all older films. There's different textures and feelings and lighting, and just every period, I think, has its own charms, and every type of film can be you have different genres and different eras, and I think horror feels different every 10 years or so.
Yeah.
For technical reasons, for aesthetic reasons.
Mm-hmm.
I do think that the technology being so easy makes a lot of filmmakers lazy nowadays.
Definitely. Yep.
You know, I mean, it's I certain visual cliches. It's just painful to see them trotted out time after time. You know, especially anything involving a little bit of CGI trickery or whatever. That I guess as I think I said earlier, I dislike anything turned out in cynicism or just something done by rote and just it's like let's churn out another McDonald's hamburger because that's what the public wants.
Yeah,
that type of an attitude.
Exactly. Yeah, no, I agree with that. How you were saying, like the nostalgia, everybody wants that. Have you noticed that a lot of like the indie films are now being released on VHS? So they have the DVD and then the VHS, and everybody wants the VHS. It's like you want that feeling.
For a while, there has been a big revival of interest in VHS, and I think it's for the obvious reason it's what people grew up with.
Yeah.
They have this very fond memory of going to the video store and being part of that type of a thing. But that was going on. In fact, Spookies was, I forget exactly what year. There's a fellow named Dustin Ferguson.
Yeah.
I was going to say.
Yeah, I know who he is. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you should interview him. He makes cheapy movies.
Mm-hmm.
What seems like hundreds a year, but I don't think it's that many quite. but he's been very successful. He's cultivated an audience. Mm-hmm. He has people who are into his movies, who are waiting for them. He's done numerous sequels to his own movies. He's bought, in some cases, rights to older movies and made new sequels to them. He's very, very enterprising.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I don't know which ones as far as the sequels. I didn't know he did that
What I was going to say is he did a bootleg cut of Spookies with just our original scenes.
Oh, cool.
It's like 46 minutes long, but it's just our scenes. I think it may be on YouTube, actually.
Nice. Okay, I'll have to check that out too. And so how did he get just your scenes? Did you tell him, this is ours?
Copy and redid it, but he also sold it on VHS.
Oh, okay.
Which is fine with me. It's like I'm at this point, with Spookies, it's like if you want to bootleg and pirate Spookies, like go ahead, everybody else has.
Yeah, that sucks though, but yeah, I get it. As far as the documentary, did you have any, I guess, say so in that, or was it just somebody said, "Hey, I'm going to do a documentary"?
They contacted me, and and they were, they contacted everybody they could who was connected with the film. But I really had the repository I had all the production records. I had most of the still photographs. I had
wow.
Really, the vast majority of any physical materials that were still around. And so I spent like the next 5 or 6 months just scanning stuff and writing out, in detail the information about certain things and how they happened and what they may have heard that was wrong and everything else. I mean, it really just, they involved me quite a bit, and without my ever asking, because it didn't occur to me, they gave me an associate producer.
Wow. Oh, good. That's cool that you had all that still, so you kind of held on to everything.
No, look, I'm a film buff, and I understand the significance of stuff like this. Mm-hmm. At the same time, because of my own feelings about Twisted Soul / Spookies and the way it turned out, I couldn't take myself seriously if this makes any sense. Mm-hmm. It's like, oh yeah, everybody else's films are historically important, but Spookies, it's I really didn't. I kept all this stuff, but it wasn't like I felt that I never got the impression somebody was going to be asking for it someday. Mm-hmm. I thought maybe eventually, I figured like when I'm 99, someone will want the Spookies archives, but it's happening fortunately before that.
That's cool. That's good. Yeah, I told you, that's how I found it.
And I am a real saver of things. I mean, I try to hold on to anything that I can. Mm-hmm. So I think I did have a lot, and they either use it in the documentary or the selection of stills that are on the Blu-ray. But I was really happy to be able to provide that, because I think without it, there would be far less that people were aware of.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely. So with it having kind of resurfaced, do you still get like royalties and stuff from that, or is it just kind of?
Here's the other sad part of the story. No royalties. We were paid cash for the work we did. We were paid remarkably little cash. And then when we did go over schedule a bit, we did not wind up getting paid for the weeks we went over schedule, because we had agreed to take block, sums of money for the jobs. So like really very little money was made. I mean, it's so it's insane how much work we did and how little we got paid.
Yeah. And
part of the reason for that is that money was needed for so many other things in the movie that our salaries kept getting pared down, and and not that we paid anybody great sums of money on that movie, but most of the crew was getting better paid than we were.
Yeah. Yep. And then it comes out of your pocket to get some other stuff done that you need.
Well, I mean, it was more important to us to get the film made than to make a profit for working on the film at the time.
Yeah. Yep. Gosh. Are you working on anything now, or is there anything in the future?
I am, of course, working on something now, because this has provided the new doorway to whatever might happen. And so I'm working on a follow-up to Spookies, which has really very little to do with Spookies in any way. It's another monster movie. I am almost done. I probably have enough material for a screenplay, but I'm writing it in the form of a treatment, just like a story treatment, as opposed to a full script. And I'm almost done with that. And I think it's based on a lot of ideas left by my late partner, Tom Doran, who I'm really happy to still be able to involve in some way.
Yeah.
But this is sort of, it's intended, it's an intentional horror comedy. And I have to say it's epic. It's probably going to be deemed too expensive when I first start showing it to people. Mm-hmm. But I think it's a great idea and a great concept. And if we could actually do it, I think it could make a lot of people happy.
Hell yeah. Well, even just with the following that you have right now, and it is resurfacing and everybody is loving it, and you were the writer on Spookies, I mean, I'm sure someone's going to want to pick that up.
Well, the business is bizarre. You never know who's going to want to do what. I mean, stuff, things that should happen just never happen. And then people who have no reputation, no background, and no connection suddenly get handed millions of dollars.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. It's weird how that works. It's like you just never know.
No, you don't. And I question, a lot of times how my first question when I see somebody is making a film is like, all right, where did they get the money?
Yep.
Because it's like, there's a lot of there's a big difference between you crowdfunded it, a production company gave it to you, your dad gave it to you. Mm-hmm. It's just a wide range, and some of those things are enormous struggles, and others are no struggle at all.
Yeah. Yep. That's the same with, I'm an author, so I'm an actress and an author, but with my books, it's like, all it takes is that one person to see it that can get you up there at the top.
Exactly.
And it's so hard. It's like, you see all these stories, even like Stephanie Meyer with Twilight and, Harry Potter, J.K. Rowling's. It's like, they got lucky. Hold on.
Yeah. Go ahead.
Play all of a sudden.
Do you have an animal there?
I have 3 of them, and my little one just decided she wanted to start chewing on her toy. So I'll cut that part out.
What are they?
I have a Pomeranian Chihuahua. Hold on. Gosh dang it, Owen. Hold out. Okay, hold on. That never happens. So I have a long-haired Chihuahua, Chihuahua Pomeranian, and a pit bull. And now she's wanting to play. Stop. She never does that. This is the one time she's ever done this. I'm so sorry.
I'm sure if she could, she would rip my throat out for distracting you.
No, she's so sweet. Well, she barks a lot, but she's really nice. They're all so nice, but they're like, Mom, they want attention. Yeah. Okay. I'm so sorry about that. But what was I saying? I forgot. Oh, about J.K. Rowling. So, with books and stuff, they have these stories where, like J.K. Rowling was living on the street and she was homeless and she had, single mom and all this. And she just had that one person that picked her book up, and look at her now. She's a billionaire. And even Stephanie Meyer, she wrote just for fun. and I guess her story was in a slush pile, and the publisher's kid pulled it out and was like, I want you to publish this. So it's like, if you could just get that one person to see your stuff, they can just get you up there so big. And it's like, we all want that.
And the thing is, it's like, you have to realize in some ways those stories are similar to stories about people winning the lottery, meaning, the odds are high against that happening to everybody.
Yeah.
But it's just all the more reason for things like, as we discussed earlier, promote yourself, get your name out there, get your work out there.
Mm-hmm.
One person will like it, they'll show it to another, It does happen.
Yeah.
Obviously, it's if it's done in the traditional way, it's easier to get something out there and create mass awareness if you have a lot of money behind marketing and publicity.
Yeah.
But you can do quite a bit with no money if you wanted to spend the time and learn how to work social media.
Mm-hmm. And I'm just so bad at that part, because it's like, I do have a publisher and they are amazing. I'm so happy they picked me up. But man, that like promoting is the hardest, because I can't force people to look at it, and I can't force people to buy it. And I only have so much reach.
It's been my biggest weakness in terms of my career. I'm very bad at, like, for instance, asking people for money.
Oh yeah.
And I always hesitate when asking someone to read my work, mostly because I spent so much time for many years submitting scripts to production companies or producers and just getting stuff out there and waiting forever for it to be read.
Mm-hmm.
Because that's just how things work. Meaning that most scripts, even if they say they're going to read them, they're probably going to take a long, long time. Because you've got 100 other scripts before that. And in general, in the business, people don't like to read, and they don't have the time to.
Yeah.
So it's, I often wonder how some scripts get into production, but then if you take into account the fact that they hate to read so often,
mm-hmm.
that I wonder in many cases if the actual producers of certain films have read the script, or they've just listened to everybody talk about having read the script.
Mm-hmm.
Because sometimes you wonder, did somebody actually supervise this and try and fix the problems with it?
Yeah. Oh yeah, I totally agree. But it's like all we need is just that one person, and we'll be good.
No, absolutely. You just you the thing is, nowadays you can start to have, like, even if it's just like minuscule, you can start to have followers. You can start to have fans. You can, it's possible for almost anybody, just from that spark, to get word out there
mm-hmm.
and get people enthusiastic about your work.
Yeah, definitely.
And bear in mind, I mean, I didn't even want to do it at all myself until very recently, because I felt, I mean, quite honestly, I felt like an imposter. It's like I couldn't just say, yeah, we made this film and it turned out great and I'm so proud of it. It was so much the opposite. And when you present your work by making excuses for it, I just don't think you're doing yourself any favors.
Yeah. Yep. Well, I hope that your script hits it big time, because that would be awesome. You deserve it.
Well, I'm really, I find this concept that I'm working with exciting. I think it's different. I can't think of another horror movie quite like it,
mm-hmm.
or horror comedy. And it's just a matter of convincing somebody, because I was advised by someone who I trust not to budget anything like this for over $2 million, just because the market is unpredictable. I mean, the fact is that, like, right now, you're talking about all these movies that are out there in video.
Uh-huh.
You really don't know which one was produced for $50 and which one was produced for $20 million.
That's true.
In many cases.
Mm-hmm.
But that's a hard thing to do in terms of an effects picture, to try and keep it down. $2 million would probably be plenty to remake Spookies,
mm-hmm.
or Twisted Souls nowadays.
Mm-hmm.
But this new thing that I'm writing is a little more elaborate, and it's a horror adventure. It's different than so many things. I want to get it out there. I need to get reactions.
Yeah, definitely. So do you have it finished enough to where you're ready to present, or is it?
I am just at the tail end of it. I'm mostly just
nice.
Going back over it to see what details I've managed to miss or leave
mm-hmm.
out. It's it's interesting because, as I told you, I'm going by these notes left by my late partner, and he left enough so that I could get a sense of the type of story he wanted to tell. But I've also had to like just invent a lot of things and make connections between things, and a character would get like, 2 lines of descriptions, but I have to really fill in the blanks and how does this character impact the story. And it's also been convenient because I live in a small town upstate. I live in Catskill, New York.
Oh, okay.
And the piece that my partner left me with takes place in like a small rural town. So I've just been thinking in terms of my town, in terms of how this should play, and I've even there are people I know who I've borrowed to create characters to some extent. Yeah, it's been really kind of a fun thing.
Oh, that's exciting. Well, I can't wait until you get it out there, and then we can.
I mean, the real pleasure in being able to do it, if it should happen, is simply to make something that would be hopefully up to the standards that we had in mind with Twisted Souls, but also with literally dozens of scripts we wrote after that never quite got financed. I mean, for years I got stuff out there. I optioned scripts. I got stuff into development in places. I got financing almost like again and again. But that happens. That's to everybody.
Yep. Yeah, definitely.
And you always have to believe it can happen, no matter how many times you failed.
Yeah. Yep, and not give up and just keep going for it.
And I have a fair amount of confidence in my creative abilities. My partner Tom, who I keep mentioning, he was one of the most creative people I'd ever met. I mean, I think he was just brilliant. He would come up with like one original idea after another. At one point, he sent me something in an email, and he said, "Look, please stop me. I can't keep doing this. I have enough projects that I can't make."
Yeah. Do you think you'll try some of those again?
We may. He has a couple. I mean, I have a huge backlog of projects, and he does also. So, and I'm his wife is somebody I'm in touch with like every week as I'm writing this thing currently. Good. And I think he has a number of ideas that I think are still worth trying to pursue. One way or another. He had a historical horror movie that he wanted to make in Scotland.
Ooh.
And spent like a lot of time trying to like romance people and get something going. And he connected with a guy over there that was very interested in it. Wanted to raise money, was just on the verge, sent him a contract. And then he suddenly hears, oh, well, there's this hot young director who somebody says we should hire because they won an award at a festival somewhere. And my immediate response was, all right, if he's such a hot young director, where is his hot young script?
Yep, exactly.
And Tom just like walked out of that. He just said, all right, my bottom line from the start was, I want to write and direct this film. Everything else is negotiable. Yeah.
Yep. Because you don't want to go through what you went through with Spookies.
There's no point, and I think it's also we don't want to just make films for the sake of making films. We actually have things we like to communicate or say, or things we want to visualize, or feelings we want to communicate to people in the audience. There's so many films that people make that I would be upset if I had made them in terms of just how I feel. In other words, as I said previously, I think people just they want their name on the screen. They want to get a credit on a movie. They want the fame. They want the praise. They want people to come to them and tell them how much they love their work or whatever. To me, that's like a side effect. I'm always thrilled, but I'm always, especially with Spookies, it's been somewhat surprising how affectionate people are.
Yeah. Yep. It's definitely out there. And I think that you could go really far with this next script just because everybody is knowing who you are right now.
I know. And that's why I've got to get this out there as soon as I can. I'm getting a little frustrated. I feel like my partner, who's still living, Brendan Faulkner, is interested in working on a sequel, but he's completely internet illiterate, and I'm sort of doing everything myself.
Yeah.
And so just the fact that and you asked me earlier if I was on Instagram. Yes, I am, but I haven't expanded to Instagram yet because I barely have enough time to keep up with Facebook.
Yeah, that's true. Yep, it's a lot. And it's like both are so different too, you know.
It is, and I feel it's really required of me to be responsive and to communicate with people. And and I make a point of anybody, if anyone wants to friend me, I thank them. I really want to tell them I appreciate the fact that they're supporting me. It means a lot, and I want any person who I communicate with to feel I've given them at least some personal attention if I can.
Yeah. Yep. Which that's going to help as well, because people love that. We like being able to connect to the people.
Although the idea of my having some amount of fame at this moment is hilarious to me.
Is what?
It's hilarious. It's just it just seems like all right, like you went like most of your life, you made this film, and now suddenly you're famous for it.
Aww.
It's okay. No, it's better now than like 40 years from now, when it wouldn't make too much difference to me.
Exactly. Yep. It's never too late.
Well, it proves that it isn't, but we're fortunate also that the Blu-ray came out at this exact time, which it's probably the peak of revival of interest in 80s horror. Mm-hmm. It just seems like I'm a big fan, and I've seen like so many movies, and I see everything I can, and yet there's still new movies coming out on disc I've never heard of from the 80s.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I used to think, oh, gee, I know everything, and I don't.
You're still learning. Well, it changes all the time,
I just think in some cases, movies that got very little release or distribution have resurfaced. And the big difference is just that almost everything is in excellent quality. And for years, you're used to seeing, as if you watched the Spookies VHS, it's not really the finest quality.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Now everything's getting remastered and cleaned up with whatever they use to do it. And it's nice. But I will definitely be getting Spookies on VHS or DVD, because I want to see it in all its glory.
Well, it's a Blu-ray. I think it's
Blu-ray.
I think it's available in Blu-ray and DVD, and I forget whether they come together or not. But I'd recommend the Blu-ray, because the Blu-ray is like, it knocked my eyes out when I saw it.
Okay, yeah, I'll get the Blu-ray. So I will find that when we get off here. So I really, really want to have it. So now we're reaching the end of the show, and this is your time to let everybody know where to find you, how to connect to you, and if there's anything that you want them to check out.
The easiest way to connect with me is directly on Facebook under my name, Frank Farel, last name spelled F as in Frank, A-R-E-L, pronounced like Farel the singer, as we discussed. And I am, among other things, I can't tell you how many, a large percentage of people that have been in touch with me recently are filmmakers. Like an enormous number. And that's so many people have said, "Oh, I saw your film. I always loved it since I was a kid. It's been inspirational to me," and I'm glad to have been able to do that. But I do hope we get to do another film. I'd like to do a film where I actually felt, all right, this is the film we intended. Mm-hmm. Even if it's terrible, then we can own up to it being terrible. But it needs to be the film that is intended from the start.
Yeah, definitely.
I'd like to be, as my partner Tom used to say, about Spookies, that he felt like, there was no way that, for people to say, to call it a bad movie and to think we were responsible for it, there's no way to get around from that. Unless, you have to provide a long, detailed explanation in most cases to make someone understand. Yeah.
Yeah. Which is why they need to get the documentary so they can hear some of that.
we won the Rondo Hatton Award, the award for best DVD extra for the documentary.
Oh, cool! Well, congratulations. That's awesome.
Yeah, it was pretty good.
That's great. But so Facebook, are you on Twitter at all, or just
I am
Facebook?
Not on Twitter.
Twitter sucks. It's hard.
Well, first of all, I don't know if Twitter would necessarily be advantageous to me, but I need to decide that, I guess, in the near future. But as I've already said, where am I going to get all the time? Right now, I'm writing most of the time. Also in the middle of moving. I'm moving to another place across town.
Oh, man.
In 2 weeks. And so I'm packing and stuff. Ugh. And I'm trying to write this film treatment. And I really, right now, if I had someone working full time, just handling my Facebook account, I think they'd be completely occupied.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, at least you have one way for people to get a hold of you, and Facebook is like the biggest one ever right now anyways.
Yeah.
So
But what I was just about to say there is simply that I'm looking to get fans and people who want to be involved. I'd like to get a good number of them involved with anything that we did as a follow-up.
definitely. Well, and it's getting there, so that's good, you know.
I hope so.
Yeah.
Thanks to people like yourself, the word
thank you.
continues to get out.
Yeah, definitely. And then, so real quick, I'm going to just run through my thanks real fast, and then we'll close it out. But I want to thank you so much for coming on. It's been fun, and you're so smart, and it's just awesome to hear how everything happened.
I haven't been called smart in a while.
Oh, well, see, you are. You're just very intelligent.
Thank you. I know that, but you know, it's like I can't brag about it or anything.
I'll just say it for you. You are so
Thank
intelligent.
You're very sweet and you're bright yourself. And I would like to come back to your show at some point.
That'd be great. Definitely. Yeah, I would love to have you on.
That'd be great.
Thank you. So I want to thank Crazy Ink Publishing for publishing my books. I have two. So Broken Halo and Broken Halo Blood Curse.
Wonderful.
Yeah. And then my third one is currently in editing right now. It's called Broken Halo Witches Game. So that should be out sometime within the next year, 6 months or so. Matthew Price Thompson with MPT Graphics, who does my artwork. Johnny Daggers with Dagger Vision Film, who does my YouTube intro, my logo, and the music. Chris Atella, who does my outro music, and then also does my intro and outro music for iTunes, Spotify, Google Podcasts, etc. My Indie Productions, I'm a featured artist on there, and I want to thank them for all of their promoting. They are amazing. They support the indie community, and they're absolutely incredible. So My Indie Productions at myindieproductions.com. They're on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. Sir Sturdy with Horror with Sir Sturdy. He's a fellow podcaster. He's how I got into podcasting. He's also been a special guest a couple times. Bud Vino, who he's done radio, podcasting, etc. And he does a new show called Morning Dad Talk, where he fights for parental rights. He's an incredible human being. He's awesome. But other than that, I am done. And again, I just want to thank you so much for coming on. I look forward to having you on again.
Absolutely my pleasure. I've had a great time.
Me too. And I will talk to you soon.
Take care of yourself.
You too.